Hi, I'm Shelley Wood and this is my tiny sewing room where I make doll clothes sewing videos. Today I'm going to show you how to make a little cotton dress which should fit 9-inch Strawberry Shortcake dolls, 10-inch Rainbow High dolls, and other similar sized dolls. Before we begin, please go to shelleywood.com to download this free printable PDF sewing pattern. There's a link in the description below this video on YouTube. Use the pattern to cut out all the pieces shown. Lay one bodice front on top of another, keeping right sides together. In other words, the pretty side will touch the pretty side like you see me doing there. Sew across the neckline, clip the neckline, which is what I'm doing here with these tiny little scissors. Invert the bodice front, just like that. Set this piece aside and let's work with the backs for a little while. Lay one back piece on top of another, keeping again your right sides together. So again, the pretty side touches the pretty side, just like this. Sew in a zigzag along the back, starting at the shoulder area where I'm pointing, extending along the neckline, and finishing at the bottom of the back closure. Clip your seams and corners. I just love these little scissors. They're really a handy tool. If you don't have some, they're great for this. Invert the bodice back. Now, I sometimes use a chopstick to help me invert, and with the back pieces especially, you might want to use a chopstick to help you poke out that corner right there. Follow these directions for both of your back pieces. Lay one back on top of the bodice front, just like you see me doing here. So a back on top of a front. Sew across the shoulder. Lay the other back on top of the front exactly the same way. Sew across this shoulder as well. Open up your bodice like you see right here and gently press the shoulder seams open. Flip the bodice over to the right side so you don't see those seams. Now we're going to work with the sleeves for a little bit, so set your bodice aside for a moment. Create a double fold hem at the end of each sleeve by folding once and then a second time. Whip stitch along the edge of this fold to hem. Now if you need help with the whip stitch, I have a tutorial for that. Just look in the description below this video on YouTube. You'll want to hem both of your sleeves. Now let's go back to the bodice just as we left it with the seams down. Lay one of your sleeves against the bodice's front underarm, keeping right sides together. You're going to sew from the underarm to just shy of the shoulder seam. I've sewn mine about 1.5 centimeters, and then tie a knot at that end point. Here's another angle to help you understand what we've sewn. Now you're going to join the other side of the sleeve to the back's underarm area. Now that was tricky to understand, so here's a video to help you understand. There's the part I've already sewn. I take the other side of the sleeve and I wrap it around to the underarm of the back. Sew about 1.5 centimeters again from the underarm to just shy of the shoulder seam, and this will leave a little gap open at the top. See that gap right where the seam is in the shoulder? There's a gap in the sleeve. You want that because we're going to make a little bit of a puffiness to this sleeve. So gather the top part of the sleeve just a little bit. It doesn't take a lot of gathers. Now when you pinch the gathers and the seam together, you want them to match up exactly. Stitch the gathered sleeve to the shoulder seam. My gathers here use a green thread, but then my attachment stitches are pink, and I did that on purpose. I used a different thread color so you could kind of see the differences. Normally I'd use all green thread here. Attach both sleeves following these same directions. So here's my latest sleeve that I just added using all green thread, and then here's the one that uses a little bit of pink thread. And then flip your bodice over to the right side so you don't see those seams again. Bring one back down against the front like you see me doing in this video. So when you bring your back down to be against the front like this, then you should be able to see the wrong side of fabric for your sleeve. Sew from the sleeve's hem to the underarm and then make a little turn and sew from the underarm to the bottom of the bodice. Follow these exact same directions for both sides of the bodice and then invert the bodice, which is what I'm doing here. This time I actually did need my chopstick a little bit to get those sleeves poked out. Set the bodice aside and we're going to work with the skirt for a little bit. Create a double fold hem along the longest side of fabric by folding the fabric once and then a second time. Now you could whip stitch along this hem's edge, but a lot of times I just use a sewing machine to stitch from one end of the skirt all the way to the other end of the skirt. Opposite of this hemmed edge, you can gather the fabric, leaving about 1.5 centimeters or an inch on either side of your gathers without gathering those sides of the skirt. Now these will form a closure at the back of the dress when we're all done, so you don't want to gather that little bit on either side. Now before you tie off your gathers, it's a good idea to pin the gathered part of the skirt to the bodice just to see if it's all going to fit together. You want to make sure that your gathers are equal in length to the raw fabric of the bodice. So the gathers need to match. Once you're sure the gathers will fit, you can unpin the bodice and then tie off your gathers. Adjust the gathers so they are even, because a lot of times they'll be wonky. See how mine are all on one side? So I'm going to even them out just by pulling with my fingers a little bit at a time until I get all those gathers even. Okay, with right sides together, you're now going to attach the bodice to the skirt, running your stitch just below the gather line so we don't see those gathers later on. And I used a backstitch for this. If you want to learn the backstitch, again, I do have a tutorial for that in the description below. Okay, when you flip your bodice up like this, remember those extensions on either side? It will fold those extensions down. So go ahead and create a closure right there where those extensions are. With the top of the skirt fabric extensions just down a little bit, fold the side extension in once, like so, and then a second time to create just a little short hem here. Whip stitch along this edge, sealing it shut. Now I'm giving my extension about 4.5 centimeters length. That's about 1 3/4 inches long. Create a closure hem on both sides of the skirt. And this next step is optional, but it really makes your skirt look nice. It's possible to use a strip of lace wrapped around the gather area to cover up all those raw threads along the gather line. I sew my lace along the gathers first, and then when I've got enough, that's when I cut it free from my spool. And then I leave an extra centimeter or so at the end that I can tuck under, and then I sew it shut as a finishing touch. And you can see in this next picture right there, you can see me sewing it shut. Now my dress should look like this on the underside, and here's that little bit of lace. Attach some Velcro as a back closure now. Fold the dress in half and sew the back shut. Just like you see me doing here, I'm folding it in half, bringing together the raw edges of fabric. And you're going to sew this shut from the back closure's hem to the hem at the bottom of the dress. Okay, invert the whole dress, just like you see me doing right here. And again, if you need your chopstick, it can be a handy tool, especially if you haven't inverted those sleeves yet. It is such a cute little dress. And now you're ready to try it on a doll. For more free printable PDF sewing patterns for making doll clothes that will fit dolls of many shapes and all different sizes, please remember to visit my website, shelleywood.com. Well, that's all I have for you today. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy my videos and my free patterns, please share them on social media. It actually helps my website grow when you help spread the word.